LAPEROUSE. Cool. .606 at Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Good Monday morning to you, everybody. Brian here with you. Jake producing. We call it Mornings with Brian Haldane, and we are off and running on a very cold start to your week. And hold on, because it's going to get colder later on this week. You just heard Marissa Nuzzo's forecast a minute ago. I'll dive back into that in just a second. But I do need to give you the rundown for today. We're all over the place today. A little bit of everything. A lot about the Omicron variant, especially when it comes to our hospitals. I'll tell you what, we'll get into that in just a second. Our guest list is as follows. Condon's out today. He is out with, I want to say he's sick, but he doesn't have COVID. Anyway, we have CBS's Jeff McCausland, Colonel Jeff McCausland, going to be talking about what's going on in Russia right now, more to the point what's going on in Ukraine, and how Russia is setting the narrative for a possible expansion of their presence, if you will. Is war on the near future? We will talk with Jeff McCausland at 6:35, 6:52 this morning. Peder Zane, he is with Real Clear Politics, and this is one that I've been dying to dive into. I saw this column last week and knew I had to talk about it just a little bit. The psychodrama of American politics. Our association and affiliation with our political party has turned the corner to something that's very unhealthy as a society. Peder Zane with Real Clear Politics tends to agree with that take, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about, is there a way out of it? Or are we so entrenched in this that we're just going to have to watch it play out the string until we divvy ourselves down into just, millions of little factions? That's coming up at 6:52. In our 7 o'clock hour, this is where Omicron's really going to take over, or where COVID's going to take over, is at 7:15. Dr. Mark Wbrz is going to join me for our Medical Monday segment presented by Our Lady of the Lake. Numbers rolling into the weekend of hospitalizations with COVID, 2,173. Only 132 of them are on ventilators, but it is changing things up a good bit within the hospitals. A lot of hospitals return to all the precautions that we saw at the height of the Delta variant. What should you expect to see if you go to the emergency room today? COVID or not? What should you expect to see in the emergency room as a result of all this? That's at 7:15. Stephen Waggis back at 7:35, talking business throughout Louisiana. We got a lot of ground to cover with Stephen, especially as we make our way further and further into the year, closer and closer to the legislative session. Big session for LABI last year. How do they replicate that kind of success this year? In our 8 o'clock hour, Senator Bill Cassidy, actually, both of the interviews in the 8 o'clock hour are already in the can. Senator Bill Cassidy, I got the chance to talk with him on Friday about a number of things that he's been working on. That's going to be at 8:15. And then 8:35, actually 8:40, William Klayber is the host of the new podcast, The MLK Tapes. Of course, today is Martin Luther King Day. A lot of folks have the day off of work today. Want to dive into with William Klayber about the MLK tapes. When you hear the term lone gunman theory, do you think of Lee Harvey Oswald? Do you think of Sirhan Sirhan? Or do you think of James Earl Ray? Was there more to Martin Luther King's assassination than we already know about, or that the public narrative, the normal story we hear? Was there more to it than that? William Klayber makes a pretty interesting case for it, and we'll talk with him at 8:40. That interview has already happened as well, so we will play it back for you at 8:40. Meanwhile, got to start off the morning, though, by kind of recapping where we're at weather-wise, as we're at 38 degrees in downtown Baton Rouge, surrounding area, a little bit less than that. Not all the way down to freezing, but with our wind chill, you are going to find freezing. 29 in Baton Rouge is the wind chill right now. And today is not the coldest it's going to be this week. Tomorrow and Wednesday, it's going to tick up a little bit. Tomorrow's high 68. Today's high is 59, by the way. Tomorrow's high 68. Wednesday's high 75. But there's going to be, a 90% chance of rain on Wednesday, and it's going to get cold again. Overnight low Wednesday night into Thursday morning, 43. The low is 43. The high on Thursday is just 49. Overnight low Thursday, 29, with a chance of some more precipitation. So as it stands right now, we might see snow Thursday morning. Or, I'm sorry, Friday morning. Your high on Friday is just 40 degrees. Overnight low Friday night, 25. Overnight low Saturday night, 29. Overnight and the low Sunday night, 32. It's going to be a cold week, y'all. The back half of the week, at least. It's going to be a cold, cold week. Then the warming trend will be a little bit, slightly more favorable to begin next week. But that's, 4 nights in a row later on this week we're going to see temperatures below freezing. Look, I like seasonably appropriate cold. That might be a bit much. We got a lot of sports to cover as well. We'll do that in our next segment. LSU basketball. The men drop one on Saturday. The women pick up another win on Sunday. We'll talk about that next. Right now, though, going to tell you about the folks over at Complete Collision Center. They've got 2 locations. You'll find them at 19511 Plank Road in Zachary. You will find them at 9848 Perkins Road in Baton Rouge. That is just east of Bluebonnet. Both locations can get everything you need done. Both locations of Complete Collision Center have the iCar Gold Class certification that puts them in the top 15% of body shops nationwide. When it comes to training, knowledge, the latest techniques, the latest hardware, the latest software, everything you need to know about repairing your vehicle and getting you back on the road safely, that's what they do. That iCar Gold Class certification goes a long way with that. They're also certified by more than a dozen major car manufacturers. Learn more online at CompleteCollision.com, CompleteCollision.com. Put their phone number in your phone. It's best to have it before you even get into an accident so you know who you're calling. 768-9898. 768-9898. Don't let who you choose to repair your vehicle be your second accident. Check out CompleteCollision.com. Quick break. I paused there. It's on me. All right. You got LRN 18, 19, and 20? All right.
Not gonna lie, I'm really hoping I can see Taylor sometime today.
Why?
Because I saw the notification that the Cowboys lost in the first round and I laughed.
Yeah, it was bad.
How do you lose to the 49ers? Granted, the 49ers ain't a bad team, but they've been their own worst enemy all season.
Okay. That's the chair without the hydraulics.
Do we have that chair now?
Yeah.
Slice in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, featuring oysters cooked 11 different ways. Try our bestseller, the brie and bacon oyster, as well as boudin and barbecue Nola style. Every Tuesday, we feature a different grilled oyster for $1.25. Jolie Pearl, downtown, 315 North Boulevard, in the heart of Town Square. Visit them online at jolieoysterbar.com.
Now, your WBRZ traffic update from Ashley Fouché.
So far, so good. There was some accidents and slowdowns and lane closures over the weekend. All of that is cleared up. You can see that the interstate I-12 is open to full exclusively, as well as I-10. Drive times are all normal. Coming in from the west side, Wbrz College Drive, 6 minutes. Bridges will see on the other direction from Marshall Tully, 6 minutes. And Branch Louisiana will slow down to 9 minutes. In Vendetta, the 530 is 46 as well. Super loud look outside at the traffic camera. Easy going and all around the capital city. This is coming in from Denham and a couple cars on the road, but volume still pretty low.
See an accident? Reported at WBRZ Traffic on Twitter.
This report is brought to you by Wbrz, where you can get up to $100 instant savings with the purchase of 4 eligible Bridgestone or Firestone tires. Visit ShawBillsTire.com to learn more. Bringing you the news you can use with Brian Kilmeade and common sense for your dollars and cents with Dave Ramsey. Talk 107.3, the new flavor of talk.
Hope it's 62 or 622.
Okay. 616 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP Sports Time. Oh, rough go of it Saturday for LSU men's basketball. They were looking good for a little while and then just stopped scoring. They fall to Arkansas on Saturday. Razorbacks went on a 17-2 run to finish out the game. LSU obviously going to drop in the polls. They went into the weekend at 12th ranked, but you pick up an L, you're going to fall. Coach Will Wade just says the Hogs made plays down the stretch, and they didn't.
We turned the ball over too much. We got out-rebounded. We missed some free throws. It's going to get you just about every time. We just weren't as clean as we needed to be.
Eric Gaines had 14. He led the way for LSU. Tari Eason and Alex Fudge each had 13. Second straight game LSU played without starting guard Xavier Pinson, who has a sprained knee. Wade is not using Pinson's injury as an excuse.
Look, we got good players. We expect those guys to make plays. I thought Fudge made some great plays today for us. I thought Fudge played really well for us. And we've got to execute better. They did some things defensively that were very smart. They took some things away. They picked Gaines up full court, which made it a lot tougher. We got into offense a lot later than we typically do. So you got to give Arkansas some credit too. Now they did a nice job.
Now Arkansas started off 0-3 in conference play before beating Missouri last week, and then LSU on Saturday. But they were 11-2 going into conference play. It's not a bad team LSU lost to. The loss does end LSU's 3-game win streak. Wade says they just couldn't overcome their weaknesses when it all came down to it.
We've struggled defensive rebounding all year. The offensive turnovers have been an issue all year. The free throw shooting's gotten worse the last probably 3 or 4 weeks. And all that stuff caught up with us today. And, all that stuff's been slipping, and all that stuff's not been as clean as it was. And it caught up with us. Sometimes you get what you deserve.
LSU will head to Alabama later on this week, January 19th. So they will be in Alabama on Wednesday, 6 p.m. tip-off. You'll hear it on our sister station, Eagle 98.1. Result was a lot better on the women's side, 82-64. Kim Mulkey's Tigers beat Vanderbilt. Kayla Pointer had 17. Jalen Cherry had 12. Faustina Fua and Alexis Morris led the way on the night, though. They each had 20. LSU does not have a midweek game this week on the women's side. Looking like they'll be at Florida Sunday at 1 is the next appearance for the women. So got a nice little stretch in between there where they get to work on a few things at practice. But LSU 82-64 over Vanderbilt yesterday. You heard it right here on Talk 107.3. All right, we're coming up on the Fox Business Report. Take a look at that. When we come back, let's talk a little Omicron next. Morning, Renee. Morning, Eric. Morning, Byron. I may have LOL when you sat down and your head was barely above the desk. Yeah, so there's 3 chairs in here. One of them does not have hydraulics in it, but all of them were at the same height when I walked in, so I did not know which one it was going to be that was going to fall. And, of course, with a 33% chance of getting, and I got it.
Got catfished by a chair on this
did.
Monday morning.
I did. Yeah, I use that one for like all my live reads that I haven't done yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll go from the stack that's on the chair back into the folder once they're done.
So it's like one of those chairs that's
But
just
I don't
like,
know
it's supposed
who-
to hold your stuff.
But yeah, exactly.
It's the chair.
It's a table basically.
It's the chair.
But
Everyone's got the chair. And in this instance, that's your chair.
it's
But not your chair.
used more as a table than a chair. But I don't know who like rearranged the chairs to where it would not be where it normally is because nobody sits on that side. You can't see that side from the camera.
What was the last show that was on? Would it be Go Rouge?
No, yeah, Go Rouge would have been Friday at 6.
Do
but
they have a logo now?
Go
'Cause there
Rouge.
was a logo up when I got here. It was like a blue, like, tiger head.
That was a Jaguar from Jaguar Journal on Saturday.
Okay.
And that probably would have been the last
That would've
live
been
show
the
in here.
last
Would have been
show then.
Jaguar Journal.
Sorry, I just cleared my throat on the mic. Sorry about that. To those tuning in.
About a minute and a half.
All right. When we get to 6:35, I got to run upstairs for a second. Forgot some stuff on my desk.
Now, your WBRZ traffic update from Ashley Fouché. See an accident? Report it at WBRZ Traffic on Twitter.
This report is brought to you by Wbrz, where you can get up to $100 instant savings with the purchase of 4 eligible Bridgestone or Firestone tires. Visit Wbrztire.com to learn more.
.623. We're coming up on 624 at Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. We're going to talk COVID here in just a little bit. Do need to remind you about Rise LA. Rise LA is coming soon. Look, COVID is one factor here, but there are a number of factors contributing to a workforce crisis here in Louisiana. Our companies are experiencing a revolving door of employees, especially low to middle income employees. Businesses are having trouble keeping their heads above water, keeping things staffed up. You've seen it firsthand. While the businesses are having trouble keeping their heads above water, the employees, I mean, those that, are not able to find themselves, match themselves with a job, they're just straight up drowning. There's a better way to handle things, though. Rise LA is coming soon. You learn how Fred is the founder and chair of Cascade Engineering. Learn how Fred Keller changed the way his company did business. And this is a game changer from start to finish. Changed the way his company did business to get hundreds of employees off of welfare while at the same time raising his own profits. Win-win, baby. Louisiana, it's time for Rise LA. It's time to rise to the challenge. You can learn more at risela.biz, risela.biz, Rise Louisiana, or Rise LA. We all rise together. So as of Friday, there were 996,623 reported cases of COVID-19 from the beginning of the pandemic through Friday. 996,623. if the numbers we've seen from the Omicron variant or the numbers we've seen from recent weeks from COVID replicate themselves over the weekend, today's numbers will have us over 1 million. Impossible to predict with any effectiveness when we're going to hit the peak of this surge. Although a lot of folks are saying it's got to be soon, right? Within this current surge, children younger than 18 represent 27% of all COVID cases reported, or of the numbers that were on Friday. 27% were under the age of 18. State Health Officer Dr. Joe Kander says that's a possible sign that the peak could be near.
This pattern where 18 through 29-year-old starts out ahead and then gets overtaken by the below 18, that is a pattern that we have seen in prior surges.
Cantor says, based on what they've seen in other parts of the world, the Omicron rages and then fades away almost as fast as it arrived.
And that's been the experience in South Africa, where it was fast on, fast off, and it looks to be the experience in UK and some of the northeastern states in the US. If you squint, you can convince yourself they're beginning to come down on the other side right now.
If you squint, right? I don't know what goes into the 18 to 29-year-olds leading the way, and then when 18 and under take over, that's when it starts to fade. Because that has to play into where we are with who we associate with, doesn't it? Omicron really started to take over right after Christmas. But if you're under 18, wouldn't it wait until you were back at school and around other people and have a reason to be tested? Which would have meant, another week to wait on it, another week to spread. Either way, Dr. Cantor wishes he could provide an answer on when the peak will arrive, but it just there's no the modeling on it isn't there, and I don't think just the reactive nature of a pandemic or the reactive nature of tracking each individual variant, I don't think it'll ever be predictable.
The numbers we're seeing now are in a different league from anything that we've seen before, and so we just don't have any confidence in any model, at least no model that I've seen.
14,000 cases, 14,158 reported on Friday. If anything from last week would continue the trend over the weekend, today's number would likely be over 20,000. Bear in mind, it would be over the course of 3 days, but over 20,000 just for reported by noon today. There were also 10 new deaths reported on Friday. The total number of deaths from the beginning of the pandemic through Friday, 15,137. 2,173 people in the hospital as of Friday. 132 on ventilators. Now, the number on ventilators is really low compared to the overall number in the hospital when compared to previous variants. And that's a good thing. But the number in the hospital is back up to about 2/3 of where it was at the peak of the Delta variant, and that is an alarming thing. That is what we're going to talk about with Dr. Mark Wbrz at 7:15 for our Medical Monday segment. What kind of changes have we seen in the emergency room? What could you expect from an emergency room visit? If you were going to the hospital right now, what would you see when you got there? What would be different? I also kind of want to pick his brain a little bit about, have we picked up on anything during COVID that's just going to be standard operating procedure from here on in? Things that we've learned, things that have changed? We'll dive into all that. Also, before the show's over today, and this is probably going to be in our last segment of the show, one of the things that the governor talked about last week during his press conference was people trying to intentionally get COVID. And I saw more and more headlines this past weekend about exactly that. I mean, it's surprising. Like, people throwing COVID parties. From ABC out of San Francisco, health officials concerned about Omicron parties where guests try to catch COVID on purpose. Tulsa doctor says he's heard people are hosting Omicron parties as well. Dining with death. Italian anti-vaxxers are paying $160 for dinner and wine with COVID-positive people so they can get the virus. Oh, we're going to dive into this before the show's over with. But that's not till later. Right now, we got to take a break, and then when we come back, I'm going to talk with Jeff McCausland from CBS. Why? There's something a brewing over in Russia. Actually, more to the point, Ukraine. And we're probably going to start to see a lot more headlines on it in the very near future. And how many of those headlines can you believe? How many are going to be disinformation? We'll dive in. Jeff McCausland is set to join us next. Right now, though, we got to check CBS News. We'll check our local news, our traffic and weather as well. It's Mornings with Brian Haldane on Talk 107.3 FM, 631. Right back after this. All right. I technically don't have McCausland until 6:40, so give it a minute before calling him. I said I technically don't have him till 6:40. I'm going to lead the segment off by talking about MLK Day closures. All right. All right, YouTube, I'll be back in just a minute. I got to run upstairs. Hey, yo! What's happening? That was weird. All right.
Figured I'd talk to the people real quick. Good morning, Renee. Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Byron. How are y'all doing on this fine Monday morning? Personally, I'm pretty tired. But you know, what else is new? It's casual.
All right. Kill the mic so I can give you Jeff's number.
Sounds good.
Secret to sticking with your goals? The right gear. That's why I went to Kohl's and got an Adidas hoodie for under $45, picked up some Nike sneakers, and got a new fleece from Tech Gear for just $12.99. Oh, I even got an extra 15% off and earned Kohl's cash. So, I'll be going back for more. Shopping counts as commerce,
Please.
right? Select styles, Adidas and Nike Clubs do not apply. Ends January 17th. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
Since the early 1800s, the Selassie family has played a significant role in the retail industry in Louisiana.
What?
Stewart
Eric just posted on YouTube. Anyone check on Taylor? His girls lost yesterday. Yeah, I saw the score. I got a good chuckle out of that, Eric.
I don't understand what Dak Prescott did on that last play. That made no sense to me.
I didn't see the game. What happened?
Like 20-something seconds left. He takes off up the middle because he had a wide open field for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Slides, and then with 8 seconds on the clock, and then they couldn't move the ball that far and reset before the clock ran out. He basically just ended the game for himself.
Did he spend too much time after the ball was dead?
No, it was only 8 seconds left.
Oh, okay.
It's just
So it wasn't like a Chase Claypool where you celebrate a first down when you're
no.
going
He
for
was
a
trying to
game-winning
get back
drive.
to it. He just-
Gotcha. That's tough.
Yeah.
Reach the mid-70s before a better rain towards the early morning front. Scattered showers will continue into Thursday morning with significantly cooler temperatures on the other side.
All right, I'm going to have to dive into that later.
We are at 46.
Okay.
I'll call him right after I get you home.
Okay. .638 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. U.S. intelligence officials have determined a Russian effort is underway to create a pretext for its troops to further invade Ukraine. Moscow's already pre-positioned operatives to conduct a false flag operation in eastern Ukraine, according to the White House. What? What does this mean? Where are we going with this? Jeff McCausland is going to join us in just a little bit. Jeff is with CBS. He handles a lot of their military stories. Anytime we have an opportunity to talk about a military story, we get Jeff McCausland from CBS on. Dr. Jeff McCausland from CBS. He founder and CEO of Diamond Six Leadership and Strategy. He is the go-to when it comes to the military topics. We'll have him on in just a second. Do need to remind you today is Martin Luther King Day, which means city parish offices will be closed today. Also, FEMA disaster recovery centers are going to be closed as well. So if you are still in the process of getting help recovering from Hurricane Ida, the disaster recovery centers throughout Louisiana are shut down as of today. Although, looking back on it, I think most of the ones in Baton Rouge have already completely shut down. So a little further down the bayou maybe. But city parish offices and all statewide offices also closed today. And schools are closed today as well, which means your traffic heading into work, if you do have to work, traffic will be a little bit lighter. All right, let's welcome in Dr. Jeff McCausland to talk a little bit about this. So, U.S. intelligence officials have determined a Russian effort is underway to create a pretext for a further invasion of Ukraine. Jeff, good morning. Welcome back to Talk 107.3. How are you, sir?
Brian, it's good to be with you.
Always good to have you on. I always appreciate your insight. Let's start with the basics. What have we already seen from Russia, and what leads us to believe that a further invasion of Ukraine is inevitable?
Well, we've seen a number of things in addition to what you just mentioned, the possibility of saboteurs creating a pretext for an invasion. But the big issue, of course, is the positioning of about 100,000 Russian troops with lots of heavy armor, artillery, et cetera, basically poised on three sides of Ukraine, the pretext for an actual invasion of the Ukraine. And, of course, then last week we had negotiations occurring between the United States and Russia bilaterally in Geneva, followed by talks in Brussels between Russia and all NATO countries, and then finally discussions in Vienna between Russia and the Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe, which includes 57 different countries, including the Ukraine, to see if a diplomatic solution could be found to Russian demands that the United States move all its nuclear weapons out of Europe, forswear any chance for both Georgia and Ukraine to join NATO, and further remove all infrastructure and troops, NATO troops, from the territory of any NATO country that joined the alliance after 1997. These are really non-starter proposals, and the Russians now have said that they seem to have been turned down, and so it's unclear whether there will be any further diplomatic talk. So tensions have risen significantly, and then on top of that, in the aftermath of those negotiations, there was also a massive cyber attack in Ukraine, which took down the websites of a number of the government ministries, to include the foreign ministry. Many people believe that also emanating from Russia.
One of the things in the story I was reading suggests that there will be a false flag operation in eastern Ukraine, that's coming from the White House, that's supposed to make Ukraine look like the aggressor here, therefore making Russia look like they're on the defense. How do you set that narrative and then have it play out? And if it plays out exactly the way the narrative was set, you could still claim you're on defense.
Well, exactly right. Of course, it goes back to the fact that since 2014, when Russia invaded Ukraine and took over control of Crimea, they have been fomenting a rebellion in the eastern provinces of the Ukraine that have large Russian populations, places called the Donbass and Luhansk. This has been going on for the last 7 or 8 years, and up to 14,000 people have been killed in the fighting. So the pretext that the Russians are trying to formulate is that the Ukrainians would be mounting a massive, invasion of this particular area, which is still Ukrainian territory, but the Russians would argue putting Russians in danger, though they're living in the Ukraine, and that would be the pretext for the Russian invasion. The White House exposing that false flag has hoped, of course, will deter the Russians from executing it, but you're quite right, and if they could still go ahead and do it, and just ignore the fact that we had, if you will, announced it in advance.
Retired Colonel Dr. Jeff McCausland is our guest. We're talking a little bit about what might be in the very near future between Russia and Ukraine. Jeff, is there any kind of timeline on any of this? I mean, how much do we know about when all this will play out?
Yeah, the real question, of course, is does Russia have all the forces in place to conduct the invasion? Mm-hmm. It looks like they have the forces in place, but they're still trying to build up, I think, the logistical tail, that being ammunition resupply, medical resupply, fuel, et cetera, to mount a major invasion, and they are moving additional troops from the Far East. The challenge for them militarily has been that so far the winter in eastern Ukraine has been relatively mild, so the ground's not frozen, and to conduct a major armor advance might end up with a lot of these vehicles being stuck in the mud, so they're probably waiting to see the weather get colder to freeze things over. And then finally, I think they're probably a little concerned about the upcoming start of the Olympic Games, as a matter of fact. As this invasion unfolds, the Russians will want to have the Chinese on their side. So I think they would like to have this basically done with prior to the Olympic Games starting, or waiting until after the Olympic Games start and begin the invasion around mid-February.
Interesting that the Olympics could play a part in this. Broadening it out a little bit big. Go ahead.
The world's a strange place.
It absolutely is. So broadening this out to bring the U.S. into it, what's our positioning here? What are the effects to the U.S. Should this play out the way it's looking like it might?
Well, first of all, the United States wants to come out of this with NATO more unified than it was prior to this particular crisis unfolding. And clearly what Russia has been trying to do is drive a wedge between the United States and the Russian Federation, or the United States and the NATO allies, I should say. I'm sorry. But this is all part and parcel of a larger Russian effort, really, to undermine the United States, undermine the credibility of the United States, undermine NATO as an entity. And it really goes back to even 2004 when Vladimir Putin said that the end of the Soviet Union was the greatest catastrophe of the 21st century. And subsequently, we've seen, of course, Russia invade Ukraine, Russia invade Georgia. We've seen Russian interference in European elections, Russian interference in American elections, Russian interference in the Brexit vote in Great Britain, Russian assassination of dissidents in countries in the European Union. All those things being efforts to undermine the credibility of the West. And this is just the latest one. So the credibility of the United States is really on the line here in the future of NATO and the security architecture that we created after the Second World War and certainly after the Cold War. If things were bad enough, the Russians have also hinted that they might actually try to expand and put the United States in the same position they feel they're in. They're claiming that we could position missiles that might threaten Moscow on Ukrainian territory. So there have been veiled threats by Russian diplomats. They might consider putting, Russian weapons in the Western Hemisphere, perhaps in Venezuela or back into Cuba, to threaten the United States in a fashion they feel threatened by the possibility of Ukraine moving westward and eventually joining NATO.
What would the U.S. need to do with, you said the credibility of the U.S. could be on the line here. What would the U.S. need to do to maintain any level of credibility?
Well, what the United States is doing right now, I think, and that is conducting very close consultations with all our Western European allies and with the Ukrainians. I think the Russians may have been a little surprised when they arrived in Brussels to negotiate with all NATO partners. The answer they got was basically one voice. No, we're not going to give in to your demands. So that ongoing unity of the West is probably the strongest card the United States can play. Secondarily, making very clear that a response to the Russian invasion would be pretty catastrophic, particularly in economic terms, to the Russians. And then thirdly, that were the Russians to invade, what they are worried about now would only get worse, and that if they're worried about NATO forces on the border of their territory, well, they can darn well be assured that if they invade the Ukraine, they'll see more NATO forces in places like the Baltic Republic, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, and all those countries that share borders with the Russian Federation, as well as the West providing military assistance to the Ukraine to defend itself very vigorously against the Russian invasion and sadly make this a rather bloody affair.
There's going to be a lot to play out in the coming weeks. He is retired Colonel Dr. Jeff McCausland. We always appreciate the time and the insight, sir.
Thanks, Brian.
Appreciate it. We're late for a break. Taking that now. I could have gone on another 30 minutes with that. Yeah, damn it. Because my next question is the world ready for this? That's the only real question. Is the world ready for this? Is anybody ready to really fight? Is anybody in NATO paying attention to anything other than whether or not we're all wearing masks to school?
The short answer is no. The world is not ready for this.
Right. So how do you... Cut the traffic. Just delete the traffic. We don't need it here. Yeah.
We're still gonna have do you want me to just cut the rest of the ads?
No, you...
We're gonna start in 25 seconds. There's still about 35 left. 40 seconds left.
Okay.
15 seconds left.
On this, there's 15 on this one?
This is a 30-second segment.
Oh. Is this the last one in the spot, in the set?
5 seconds in between those after that.
5 second. You don't need the 5 second one.
Starts 3, 2.
Good. Go ahead and hit. Wait. All right. Now. Go ahead. What was the 5 second one? Okay. Sharpen my pencil.
Morning, it's Peder Zane. Wonderful. This is, doing well, thanks. This is Talk 107.3 Baton Rouge. How are you this morning? Thank you. Happy holiday as well. Are you going to be ready for us in just about a minute or two? Okay. We'll put you on hold and we'll get you on.
All right. Love the meme. Eric shared a meme with me. It's actually, he posted on his Facebook as well. It's good stuff. Very funny. Renee says, when I went to the ER at Oxnard on January 4th, it was very busy but officially run. Took a while to get me a bed. Then almost 24 hours to get a hospital room upstairs. Very good. Nice. Well, hey, you all right? Making sure you're all right first. But secondly, yeah, a lot of folks are in that boat right now. It's even tougher now. Because think about it. January 4th, we were still under 1,000 people in the hospital statewide. January 4th, I think it was under 500 at the time. You said I had another live read, Mooyah, maybe? Okay, I'll do that. It's 7. Oh. 652 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Again, thanks to retired Colonel Dr. Jeff McCausland from CBS to join us to talk about what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. As kind of a precursor to where we're going next, because should things escalate and the U.S. have to get involved, what would be our level of support on the just among the populace? Peder Zane with Real Clear Politics has a column out titled "The Psychodrama of American Politics." The long and the short of it is we are so entrenched in the letter behind someone's name that we can't see the forest through the trees. We can't even see the people versus the party. He joins us now. Peder, good morning. Welcome to Talk 107.3. How are you, man?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me on today, and happy Dr. King holiday.
Yes, absolutely. As well as we'll be talking about Dr. King a little bit later on in the show for sure, but happy Dr. King holiday to you as well. So,
and he brings people together, so that's like a good segue too. You know, I mean, he's somebody that everybody can agree on, and we can maybe at these times think about all the things we do agree on and all the values we do share, instead of all the small things that we make significant that take us apart.
It's a good point, and it's a good place to start. Are there still things that we could share without, arguing 3 comments down?
Years ago I wrote a different column that was really about how the best among us are the worst. And what I meant is that, the people who really pay the most attention to politics, who read 10 papers and watch cable news all the time and, really try to read up on things, are the most divisive and extreme people. And I think that's one of the reasons that independents often, decide elections, because the people who maybe are not so wrapped up in the narratives of each party, but just sort of take a step back and say, what do I believe in? What's really going on here? Mm-hmm. I mean, thankfully, they still are the ones who are making the decisions. So, I mean, the odd thing is it's really the people who focus the most on this, who honestly, have been brainwashed a little bit and have become more tribal than other sides, than the people in the middle.
How did we get to the point of where we are this tribal? And by the way, the title of the column is The Psychodrama of American Politics, and you really do dive into the last 20 years, I guess, of presidential elections, to be sure, but everything else that's fallen within that time as well. How did we get to be this tribal? Is it just we're sore losers, or how did we get where we are?
Well, I think that there's a variety of factors. I think one of them is the sort of just decline of normal affiliations that people used to have, whether they were members of the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, religion. You know, people are still religious, but I mean, especially honestly, people who run the country to some extent, they have less affiliations with groups, so that politics becomes an identity. Your listeners, think about how many people, when you ask them what they are, you know, they might list their race or ethnic group or whatever, but they go, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a whatever. That has really become a way of belonging. And, you know, people used to say, it's like your sports team. And so, you know, if LSU's playing Alabama and there's a close call, we know how each side's going to see it, you know? Right. Now, to me, it's become like the Palestinians and the Israelis. And each side, although honestly I feel like the Democrats more so than the Republicans, but each side has used such demonizing and delegitimizing language towards the other team, the other side, that I don't know how you can possibly then make peace with them. You know, look at Joe Biden's speech the other day on the Voting Rights Act. I mean, if the other side is Jefferson Davis, Bull Connor, and George Wallace, how do you then 3 months later say, hey, you know, we've made peace with them, we've broken bread, we're all going to get together and figure things out? And that's kind of what you have in Israel and with the Palestinians. How do you make peace after you've, you know, blown them up and given money to martyrs and so forth?
Is there a way through it?
I think there is. I think, one, you're seeing a backlash against the extremes of the left now with the school board meetings and so forth. I hope that Donald Trump, hold on the Republican Party. And honestly, I think he did a lot of good things as president, but I think he is incapable of letting go of the fact he lost.
Right.
I think that it was a highly unusual election. There's plenty of reasons for people to, be upset about that. I get that. But he was not cheated out of 8 million votes. He lost by a lot. It was not close. It was a little close in some swing states, but, the margins were actually bigger in those swing states than they were when he beat Hillary by a razor margin, even though he lost the popular vote. So I think that, I think the Democrats are a tougher sell because the Democrats have always been a very hierarchical party. They've always been top down. They always are a bunch of elites who say that they represent all the people below them whose interests they act in. So I think it's harder for them to let go of the leftward tilt than I think the Republican Party, which is still sadly in the grip of Trump, who, like I say, did a pretty good job as president, but is clearly got a pathology going on where he cannot drop this 2020 thing. He just can't do it. I think it'd be easier for them to jettison him at some point because I think it would be from the bottom up. I think it would just be lots of their voters at some point saying, we got to move on, or I get it, or he's not exciting me anymore, or somebody else has taken the mantle of, which is really what's key, is somebody else to say, the system is not working for us and is not fair, and I need another standard bearer to call these people out, but it's not just Trump.
Peder Zane's our guest. We got about a little bit less than 1 minute left, Peter, and I hate to open up this whole bag of worms with less than a minute to go before news, but I got to ask, you talk about who's the next standard bearer. Is there something to the idea that even with the adoration of Trump, is there something to the idea that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't? I mean, could what's next actually be worse?
You never know in politics. My sense is that that worse could only be somebody who is more narcissistic. It is more, not just narcissistic, the strength of Trump was nobody had a thicker skin. I mean, even Ronald Reagan, was sort of pummeled by Iran-Contra. And you think about all of the nonsense, the lies that they threw at Trump with the Russiagate scandal. Yeah. Nobody else could have withstood that as he did. But the problem is he likes conflict. He enjoys the divisiveness and stirring things up. And that is good in a political leader who is not the president of the United States. And you're seeing that with Biden. You know, it's fine for AOC to go out or Chuck Schumer to say, oh, they're Jim Crow 2.0. You're the president. You need to be presidential.
Yeah.
So I think that another Republican, the problem is that another Republican probably wouldn't have his courage to do the right thing and to take those bullets. So the thing that made Trump bad, in my opinion, of, like enjoying conflict, gave him the strength to do unpopular things like moving the embassy to Jerusalem, which they said couldn't be done, or brokering the peace deals he did in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. I don't know that somebody else would be as effective as he is, because he didn't care on multiple levels.
We're going to have to pick this up at another time. We're straight up out of time. He is Peder Zane. The column's called The Psychodrama of American Politics. I highly recommend reading it. Just Google it. You will find it. Peder, thank you so much for the time this morning.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Here we go. CBS News. Ah, man. I could have already out the blocks. 2 interviews that could have been 5 times longer than they were. His memory has been forgotten by many. You talk about Dr. King? Absolutely. I agree 1,000%, Eric, and this guy speaking is perfect. If you talk about Peder Zane, he's going to be a regular around here. There's people I reach out to just testing the water. That was way too good. So I need to get him a bigger... Like, that segment was only 8 minutes long. And it's got to be a 14-minute segment. Is my wife up yet? Excuse me. Sorry. My bad. Yawn right into the microphone. Yeah, he's so I got in touch with him from a group called Real Clear Politics, and we'll have another Real Clear Politics guy on tomorrow, Mark Mills. But I don't talk a lot of national stuff, and that's on purpose. This morning was a little different because I saw those two tie themselves in together. Like, and where I really wanted to go with that last guy was, walk down this path with me for just a second. Where I really wanted to go with that guy was, what could possibly unify our nation right now? What if there were like a global pandemic that affected all of us? Surely we would put down our swords, come together, and do our best to manage our way through it, right? No. What, did we? Yes. I don't know. I mean, you have a pastor of a church was arrested. Of course, he was arrested for trying to run a guy over with a bus, allegedly. But right from the start, it was the battle lines were drawn. And the very first shots fired in the pandemic, Donald Trump cut funding to all the research, so it's going to be bad. Orange Man bad. (7:06) at Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Hour 2 of Mornings with Brian Haldane coming your way right now. Thanks again to retired Colonel Dr. Jeff McCausland for hopping on board from CBS to talk a little bit about what's going on between Russia and Ukraine and what we can expect in the near future. Thanks again to Peder Zane from Real Clear Politics for talking about the psychodrama of American politics. And honestly, those two tie in together so well. I could have gone another hour with both of them. In fact, I probably should have like a little round table on to talk about the Venn diagram of where those two stories are going to cross over. Because as the news comes out about what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, how much are we even going to believe? With the way things have been spelled out to us, or doled out to us, I should say, over the past few years, how much are you even going to believe what you read? Remember that line from the song Heard It Through the Grapevine? Believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. I'm sure that line comes from somewhere else. I don't attribute that directly to Marvin Gaye, but that's why it sticks out in my head. That's where I'm going to be for the next year. We were talking during the break with the chat on YouTube. By the way, if you're not following us on YouTube, if you have not yet subscribed on YouTube, go ahead and get in there because the conversation does continue through the news breaks and what have you. If we were at war tomorrow, would our nation be on board with getting behind our nation? What would it take to bring this country together? A global pandemic didn't do it. Right from jump, we saw where any movement by the government to stave off the spread was criticized at every corner, criticized at every turn. And here we are, close to 2 years later, still dealing with the pandemic, and everybody's still as righteous as ever, as self-righteous as ever, saying, yeah, I told you. 2 weeks to slow the curve didn't work. Well, no, they did slow the curve. You didn't eliminate the curve, you slowed it. You flattened it. Now you got to flatten it again and again and again every time there's a new variant out there. But that's neither here nor there. The main point of that whole thing within those last two segments was we have yet to see what can bring about the unification of this country, and I don't think a foreign enemy would do it. We could be invaded by aliens tomorrow, and half the country would be on the alien side. Coming up this hour, if you head to the ER today, COVID or not, if you head to the ER today, what can you expect to see? Dr. Mark Wbrz joins us for Medical Monday next. Stephen Wagasback from LABI will be on board at 7:35. Right now, though, I got to tell you about the folks over at Wbrz, Fries, and Shakes. While we can't agree on everything in this nation, we can agree that the best burger in Baton Rouge comes from Wbrz, Fries, and Shakes. Now, if you want to really get down and disagree, we could fight over whether or not the Hamburg dog is the best thing on the menu, or the best case scenario is, or the Double Diablo, or the A Wonderful, or building your own burger to your specification, to your liking. 2 locations, Segan just north of Industriplex, Blue Bonnet at Highland. Swing by for lunch today. Argue over which is the best burger in Baton Rouge. They've got it there. They've got the freshest ingredients. They got fresh cut vegetables, or fresh cut lettuce, tomato, onion, the whole works. Freshly baked potato buns, certified Angus beef, and you're not going to find better service anywhere around. Wbrz, Fries, and Shakes. All right, time for the top stories and trending. Let's roll. 36-year-old Christopher Free of Virginia Beach, Virginia, heads home the big winner after this weekend. The 2022 Louisiana Marathon is in the books. Free completed the 26.2-mile race in 2 hours and 38 minutes, shattering his previous personal best by 6 minutes. This was Free's 15th marathon run, first marathon win. Over 2,000 runners from 42 states and 7 countries competed in Saturday's and Sunday's races, with 594 completing the full marathon. 24-year-old Lucas Sepkauskas, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, Lucas. Lucas was the highest finisher from Baton Rouge, 17th overall, at 2 hours, 56 minutes, and 31 seconds. 78-year-old Frank Bright of Shreveport was the oldest to complete the marathon, 4 hours, 26 minutes, and 46 seconds. Next year's marathon, January 14th and 15th of 2023. Taking you back to Friday night, 3 people were shot while leaving a convenience store on Weller Avenue around 8:45 p.m. Baton Rouge police said the shooting happened at Weller Food Store. All victims were in stable condition. Officers have not identified a motive, nor have they identified the suspects. 19th JDC Judge Christopher Dassaw died suddenly Sunday. He was found dead at his home on Sinbad Street, source told our news partners at Wbrz. He was first elected to the district court back in 2020. Dassaw worked under Baker City Attorney Ken Fabry as the city of Baker's prosecutor. He oversaw criminal trials. Fabry said, quote, "He lived, he loved, he laughed, and he cried, but he will never die because we will remember Chris, the young man who felt he was born to be a judge." Baker's mayor, Darnell Waits, issued a statement to Wbrz mentioning how he will be deeply missed, and Mayor President Sharon Weston Broom said, quote, "East Baton Rouge Parish has lost a talented and dedicated public servant with the passing of Judge Christopher Dassaw." She added that he was committed to justice and progress in our community. Details about what caused his death were not immediately available, but sources said his death was from a health issue. Get ready for freezing temps later on this week. Tonight, tomorrow night, not going to be below freezing. Thursday night and Friday morning, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, we're going to be below freezing each one of those nights, and there is a possibility that Thursday morning we might actually see some snow as well. A man was found shot to death inside a vehicle on I-110 South near Hollywood Street overnight. Detectives said the victim, identified as 38-year-old Percy Williams, was found around 12:30 in the morning. He'd been shot multiple times while sitting inside the vehicle. No immediate details about a suspect or motive. Those are your top stories. Here's a look at what's trending. Right back to the snow. We already saw a little bit. Early Sunday morning snow flurries were seen across South Louisiana and Southwest Mississippi. The snow flurries were light. They were hard to capture. They were hardly captured on radar. A majority of it did not stick. Still, for those who got to see it, it was exciting to see. Now, like we said, there's a possibility that we'll see more of it later on this week. So we'll be talking with our news partners at Wbrz quite a bit about this. 713, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. We are due up for our first break of the hour. When we come back, it is time for Medical Monday, presented by Our Lady of the Lake. That's coming your way next. All right. Gotcha.
Announcing the 2021 Louisiana Association of Broadcasters Scholarship. Two $4,000 scholarships are available for Louisiana broadcasting students to help enhance or put the finishing touches on an education and career in broadcasting. For details, call 1-800-364-7260 or go to www.broadcasters.org to apply. January 31st, 2021. The LABI Scholarship Program. Good for you, good for us, great for Louisiana.
Picture this. You're trying to hire someone or buy something, and you click on their website, but it takes forever to load.
Eric says, thanks, Hillary. Isn't that kind of the point?
If you're concerned that
Like, in the midst of that conversation.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for coming. We're growing fast, and I stopped working weekends, thanks to how much smoother everything runs on NetSuite by Oracle.
Fantastic. We're still using QuickBooks.
Why haven't you upgraded to NetSuite? Watch your language. The kids are right there. Sorry, Amy. NetSuite gives you
See, Troy proving the point as well. A COVID kumbaya was never going to happen in an election year after the Dems had stepped in their mess kit with a faux impeachment, and the economy was humming. So it's the Dems' fault. They're the evil bastards. No, but you get my point, right? Because I guarantee you somewhere Democrats are saying the exact same thing about Republicans. Tell you who I've been following lately. And look, she's got a D after her name, so vilify me all you want. Take it on. Give a couple minutes worth of your attention to what Tulsi Gabbard's got going on. I'm looking at and I know everybody hates Dr. Cassidy, but I'm looking at what Dr. Cassidy's got going on. I'm looking at what Tulsi Gabbard's got going on. Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. There are pockets of those who are willing to talk and willing to listen without betraying who they are. I don't know where Wbrz is at, so I don't. This segment's going to be weird if I don't have him here. Yes. Yes, it is time for Medical Monday, and we're hoping to connect with Dr. Mark Wbrz to talk Medical Monday here. As, what we've seen in the last couple weeks has been an alarming change in our hospitals. A big-time alarming change in our hospitals as... My apologies, let me walk through this just to make sure, because we don't have him yet. As the Omicron variant has spread like a flash fire, and hopefully it'll go away as soon as it got, just like it got here. But with that, we went from having, fewer than 300 people in the hospital the week before Christmas to 2,173 as of Friday. And that number is likely only going to rise moving forward. Well, at least for the next couple days. No end is yet in sight, so what would it bring to us as far as going to the hospital is concerned or going to the emergency room is concerned? No. Trying to email while talking. Give me 1 second here. What would it look like going to the emergency room right now? What can we be doing to make things smoother? We were supposed to have Dr. Wbrz on for Medical Monday. I will continue to effort that right now, but tell you what, let's skip ahead a little bit. If my apologies, y'all, we're going to have to do this on the fly. Hey, Jake, go to the last segment on the rundown there. You see where it calls for those sound bites? Okay, let's skip to that then. Since we were going to talk Omicron anyway, let's talk Omicron. Hey, I need John Bell 1 and 2 from last week. Okay. Since we were going to talk Omicron anyway, let's go ahead and talk Omicron. This story coming to us from ABC is more top health officials are trying to prepare the community for a higher likelihood to contract Omicron. Some people are actually thinking about doing this on purpose, taking matters into their own hands when it comes to the pandemic. You've heard of chickenpox parties? People are now considering getting COVID on purpose through Omicron parties. The story from ABC says it's something that's surprising doctors like UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, infectious disease specialist Dr. Peder Chen-Hong to hear. He says, quote, I think there's a sense of fatalism in people. Like, I'm going to get it anyway, so why not just get it and get it over with? Maybe I won't have that anxiety trying to protect myself. This is apparently a real thing, a legitimate thing. Omicron parties. So Governor John Bel Edwards held a press conference last week to talk about the spread of the variant and how it's pretty much everywhere. And he actually addressed this, talking about people going out of their way to get it on purpose.
I will tell you that is not a good strategy. You don't want to get COVID, period. Because even the cases that are referred to as mild will make you feel sick, and very sick in some cases. It means that you can probably manage your symptoms at home if you have a mild case. But we have seen many, many cases where symptoms have persisted for a very long time. And it isn't like if you choose to expose yourself and contract COVID, you can also decide which or how severe your case of COVID is going to be. I mean, you just can't do that. You do get to choose, however, whether you have the best possible protection against being hospitalized and dying. And for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, that does mean being vaccinated.
So I did a couple of Google searches, or I did a Google search and found a couple of different results on this one. And there are all kinds of headlines about it. This is apparently a real thing. People going after, seeking out COVID right now because it's reported that it's not as severe. For example, the Friday numbers, 14,000 new cases. We're up to 2,100 in the hospital. 14,000 new cases. We were above 10,000 new cases every single day. To have that overwhelming number of new cases, while the number in the hospital is alarming, it's there based off of volume, not based off of severity. And then it gets even less severe when you look at the number of COVID patients on ventilators. But it's an interesting dynamic to see do you want to call it defeatism? Do you want to call it fatalism? To say, well, we're going to get it anyway. Why not put ourselves in the line of fire, get it done? The story out of ABC San Francisco is just one. There was also another story. Headline, Dining with Death. Italian anti-vaxxers are paying $160 for dinner and wine with COVID-positive people so they can catch coronavirus and avoid getting the shot. So in order to avoid the vaccine, they're getting it. There was another story out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Doctor says he's heard people are hosting Omicron parties. The WHO, the World Health Organization, also warning against COVID parties and the dangerous dismissal of Omicron. What I'm curious about this, though, what makes me curious about this is the headlines are pretty overwhelming about how quickly this thing is spreading and about how it hasn't been as dangerous as Delta. And none of those headlines are untrue. Those headlines are very much fact. It is spreading like wildfire, and it is less dangerous than Delta, or so far the numbers have shown. My level of curiosity comes in with, are you surprised? Once you sit back and read the stories, I'm not. The inevitability of the whole thing, act as if it's everywhere, we're told. Go ahead and assume if you have symptoms, go ahead and assume you have it. If you've been exposed, we need more testing because more and more people have it. Does this surprise you? And would you attend one of these parties? Let us know on our YouTube page. Mornings with Brian Haldane available on YouTube. Mornings with Brian Haldane is available on YouTube. We're live every single morning and getting your feedback throughout. I can't envision a scenario where I would willingly give myself the disease. Because you, like the governor said, you just don't know. I mean, sure, you could catch it, be asymptomatic, build up the antibodies to this particular variant. Then a couple months down the road, the next variant's out there, so the whole thing was for nothing. Like with chicken pox, I remember growing up, a lot of parents wanted to expose their kids to chicken pox so they could have it and get it over with. Of course, you learn much, much later that you carry shingles with you the rest of your life once you have it, but that's neither here nor there. But a lot of parents did do that, but once you were done with chicken pox, you were done with chicken pox. The number of people who have had COVID 3 or 4 times now, you don't know if after the Omicron variant, the next variant is that much more severe and you catching Omicron has nothing to do with the next one, then what did you really get accomplished? What did you really get done? We'll pick that back up later. Talk about it at a later time. And hopefully we'll get more on the emergency room topic as well, because what we're seeing in the emergency room is definitely a little bit different than it was before this variant really took over. Once the numbers had dropped all the way back down, it was almost like it was pre-COVID altogether. In fact, the numbers in the hospital overall were lower than they were at any point during the pandemic. One more COVID-based topic before we move on, though. And that's coming from the Centers for Disease Control. The CDC has updated their consumer mask website to emphasize protection, fit, and comfort. Their consumer webpage describing the types of masks and respirators used to prevent the transmission of SARS-CoV-2. Masking, they're still touting as a critical public health tool to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But it's important to remember that any mask is better than no mask, but each individual mask does something a little bit different. The CDC is finally catching up on their website to what we were told numerous times and then reminded of last week, is that if you've got a cloth mask, what you're doing is you're knocking down a lot of the plume that you're exhaling, but you're not really stopping what you're breathing in. If you've got a KN95, different story. You are affecting things on both fronts. CDC finally catching up on that in that regard. All right. We're going to have to regroup on the Medical Monday segment for another time. Right now, though, let me take just a minute to tell you about the folks over at the Baton Rouge Mattress Outlet. 2 locations, 4065 Florida Boulevard, Mid-City, 4065 Florida Boulevard, Mid-City, or the corner of Jefferson and Hoosier 2 down in the southeastern corner of the parish. Mitch Kimball has got some sales going on to start off the year. A twin gel memory foam mattress, just $149.99. A full gel memory foam mattress, $199. Queen mattresses, name brand queen mattresses, normally $900, now down to $399. You can get a king size mattress, name brand king size mattress, marked all the way down to $599. And here's the real kicker. You ever wanted a California King? Huge. California King plus the adjustable base is regularly $24.99. Mitch has got that going on for $999 while they last. And I was texting with him heading into the weekend. He still had some available at both locations. By the way, mention you heard about it right here, you will get free delivery. Mention you heard about it right here, you will get a free pillow. Mitch and his team want to take care of you over at either location of the Baton Rouge Mattress Outlet, 4065 Florida Boulevard or the corner of Jefferson and Hoosier 2. Couple minutes left before we check news. Was perusing the Advocate yesterday, or last night I should say. Shout out to Leah Skeen and Jacqueline DiRobertis, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, from the Advocate. They did a fantastic job covering the record number of murders in East Baton Rouge Parish for 2021. The headline reads, Gun violence, domestic abuse, gangs drove East Baton Rouge murders to a record high in 2021. The last homicide victim of 2021 was a young barber killed in a Baker shooting, a, quote, gentle giant with so many plans. Anyway, it starts off by talking about the last victim of 2021, but then dives into some of the overall overriding themes that we've talked about. One of which is, and I wanted to touch on this briefly, that this is a national issue. I know I talked about it with the mayor last week. I talked about it with the chief of police last week. It's interesting once you start to hear about stories from other places, because when it comes to homicides and a record number of homicides in Baton Rouge, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the idea that everything stinks right here. It's different when you put a broader lens on it and learn that it is happening everywhere. From the Advocate, it says other cities also saw a quick uptick in 2021, but the Baton Rouge spike was more dramatic than most, roughly 30% higher than the previous year, 84% higher than 2019. But here's the thing, though. Chief Murphy Paul is quoted in the Advocate as saying, this isn't just a Baton Rouge issue, it's a national issue. I get the public frustration, but I want people to know there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. When it comes to this being a national issue, do you care? Or do you only care about the fact that it's going on right here? when the chief says this is a national issue, what's your immediate takeaway? Well, I don't care if it's a national issue. It's affecting us right here. That's what I care about. Anyway, if you get the chance to check it out, it's called Gun Violence, Domestic Abuse, and Gangs Drove East Baton Rouge Murders to Record High in 2021. Saw it at theadvocate.com. Here comes CBS News. Why am I cottonmouth this morning?
So we're not using JBE2?
No. No.
Are we using the first one at the end of the show, or no?
Keep JBE2 until the end of the show. I'll go back to it there.
Keep 2?
Yeah. Not one. We already used one. That sucks. I hate when people brick. Oh. Oh.
We can try and reschedule it this week, or just next week?
I don't know.
I'm going to save the draft and keep it because I did.
Yeah. Yeah, save it. That's fine. Yeah, if we get a chance to revisit it later on in the week, we will. But yeah. Well, I took it right from the news call, so. Troy says, I'm not vilifying any party. I'm a Cassidy supporter. I was just providing some context. Dems need something to attach, and the Republicans need to show distinct leadership, and here we are. But it's interesting, though, when you have Democrats vilifying Republicans for not taking COVID seriously early on, and Republicans claiming the whole thing was nothing and a conspiracy, and then like 6 months later start to change their tune and say, nobody's ever said it was nothing. Well, yeah. Everything's on tape now. Let's go back and listen to the tape. A lot of folks said this was nothing. To me, there's equal parts blame. There's plenty to go around. Here's the thing. You show me, like, where were the Republicans at the very beginning who weren't shouted down? Where were the Republicans who were able to say, hey, this is going to kind of suck, but let's all go along to get along for a little while, see where this gets us, see what we can learn in the meanwhile. I guess that's where I'm going with that, because those Republicans, they were shouted down immediately. Oop, hotline. Hotline. What's happening, Steven? It's Brian. I know. My producer walked away for, I don't know what, but during a break, you know. So, yes, going through what you had texted over, let's see. Yeah, I definitely want to start with the other state chamber CEOs, because that's going to cross so many lines between inflation and COVID and everything else that like falls under that. So definitely start there, and then once we get into LABI's calendar, I don't even know if we'll have time for the filibuster. So, well, he's actually already in the can. I talked to him on Friday. Yeah. And we do talk filibuster a little bit, but different takes on the filibuster. It's kind of all over the place. So, hang tight.
Tackling the top stories of the day. Brian Kilmeade, weekday mornings from 10 to 1 on Talk 107.3.
Okay. Yeah, crap. I could have gotten that in the last segment when I was just vamping for the last 3 minutes.
Fair. You already hit a live read then, though.
Baton Rouge mattress, yeah. Not back to back, but like live read, topic, live read can all.
The last live read of the show.
Well, that was weird. Took a sip of water, and when I put the cup back down, it splashed back. Don't know that I've experienced that. 737 Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Time for us to get caught up with what's going on in business in Louisiana. And to do that, we speak with the president of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, Stephen Wbrz. Welcome aboard, sir. How are you on this Monday?
Brian, how you doing, big guy? What's going on?
Doing very, very well. Nice and refreshed after a wonderful weekend. Marriage retreat at St. Joseph Abbey down in Covington. It was fantastic.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff.
So this is as dutiful as a husband as you're ever going to be right now.
You know what? Right? Yeah, got a little retreat high going on right now, and
hey,
yeah, absolutely.
Ride that wave, baby.
I'm all about acts of service. No, I'm all about quality time right now. That's the wife's love language. So, well, your job requires you to get up early, get out of the house, and be gone most of the day. But look, keep telling yourself. I like to hear that. That's good. That's good. The heart's in the right place. I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. That's
I might physically be located somewhere else, but still. Well, you know what? I say we're starting off on Monday morning. We are starting off Martin Luther King Day, and I'd be remiss if I didn't start right there by reaching out about a few of the thoughts on MLK Day.
Yeah, well, I guess my thoughts are this. Look, it's entirely appropriate every year that we take this moment to reflect on his impact, and especially, right now where the last couple of years have been so challenging. And, I think the best way to kind of view it is if you go back to some of the messages that he had. And if you go back and watch some of, his messages and listen to them and read some of them, I mean, he was a guy who was 100% focused on everyone finding a way to live together, to work through problems together. He was the farthest thing you could be from divisive. And his whole message was unity. And, I think right now, whether you're talking about racial relations or any other aspect of our lives right now, we could all use a pretty good heap and spoonful of a focus on unity, trying to find ways to work together. And look, we're always going to have our differences, no matter the issue. But he was a really strong leader. And look, that's okay. Just find ways to live together, to work together, to play together. And I think that's appropriate. And so I hope folks are taking some time to spend some time with family today, like you mentioned earlier, but also taking some time to reflect on, hey, this is a new year. It's a great time to kind of start with a new focus and maybe put down Twitter, put down some of the harmful rhetoric on social media, and instead embrace a more unifying message and approach. And that would be a good tribute to him, I think.
I couldn't agree more. Well said. Very well said. Stephen Wbrz, president of LABI. That being said, let's talk a little bit about where we are. Let's talk a little bit about business. You were at a conference last week, correct?
Yeah, last week when you and I spoke, I was about to go into one of those big conference rooms where I was meeting with all the other, not all, but most of the other state chamber CEOs from around the country, and we were going to do a deep dive on how their economies were doing, what was going on nationally, et cetera. And it was an interesting takeaway. I mean, I think in visiting with some of my peers, a couple of things really rose to the forefront to me. One is workforce is an issue that every single state is dealing with. Mm-hmm. And it's also an issue that every single state is still looking for the perfect solution to get this going again. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in here down in Louisiana, man, all I hear are challenges with workforce. I mean, the ones where you hear the most about it are kind of hospitality and tourism, and some of the economic data we heard last weekend really underscore the point that the states that rely heavy on hospitality and tourism like we do are the ones who are struggling the most to get out of this COVID response. But look, you also saw this weekend the Advocate had a story on healthcare. I mean, healthcare itself is having to challenge finding people to come in and work. There's no industry that's immune from it, and that's a big issue there. Another interesting thing I found is that when you talk to some of the other state chamber CEOs, man, the South is literally a vacuum cleaner for people and investment right now. And you look at the numbers, California, New York, and Illinois, they are hemorrhaging people right now. People are leaving there, fleeing there as fast as they can, and they are looking south. They showed us one chart where Zillow over the last year, the top 10 destination cities in the country, 9 of them are in the South. If you look at some of the data, every state except 2 have gained people over the last year on moving in. And the challenge is, if you look at Louisiana, unfortunately, we're an outlier, man. We have the 8th highest percentage of people leaving the state, not coming here. Last quarter, we were the only state in the South to have a negative GDP. In fact, it was the second worst in the country when other states around us are growing exponentially. And going back to those people that are leaving the state, they polled a lot of them, and about half of those said they were leaving for another job. And half of those leaving were bringing their whole household with them. So we are losing people at a time which is, frustrating, but especially when you compare it to what the rest of the South is doing, which is literally being a vacuum cleaner of investment in people. And we're the only one losing folks when other states are gaining. That was a frustrating reality to hear from some of our peers.
So, yeah, it was. And I'm glad you at least brought up the fact that Louisiana was in that same number with New York, California, and Illinois, 3 states that are nothing like we are, and yet for some reason we end up on that same list. Now, I've got to ask this question, though. Is the popular vote with the moving running behind where we are legislatively? For example, did we make strides in our last legislative session to curb that, and will the numbers catch up with it based off of what got done and what can still get done this session?
Well, that's the hope. And look, here's the realist in me, and then I'll give you the optimist answer. The realist in me is that, look, over the last 2 years, we have started to chip away at some of our long-term problems, on the tort reform front and on the tax reform front. That's the realist in me says, absolutely, that can help make strides. Now, the other side of that is, look, those were compromises that we had to go to get through. The truth is, we need to have additional efforts on top of those. On the tax front, we definitely lowered that income tax rate, did away with an exemption to pay for it, and that's great. But if you look at the states that are in the South that are really picking up, it's Texas, that's Tennessee, it's Florida. Those states with the hottest Zillow markets, those are the ones with no income tax.
Right.
And those are the ones that kind of, pride themselves on being business friendly, low regulation. And so look, absolutely great gains the last couple of years, but we got to do more. And if there is a good news to this, it's that, one, we are located in the South, and that's where people in this country want to live. Okay, so that's good. 2, I think the good news is the recipe is not complicated. We know if we continue to make our tax code more competitive, keep chipping away every year, and we know if we address some of these things like education and infrastructure, which we started to chip away at, look, we're on the right path. We just, the question is, do we have the guts to dial up the implementation and turn it into a 3 to 4 year implementation as compared to a decade long? But we're chipping away. We're getting in the right direction, and we're located in a place of the country where the rest of the people around the country want to move to. So this is a buyer's market time for the South. That's why we got to ramp up our efforts to chip away at our challenges.
Well, it's not just a part of the country that everybody wants to move to, but as far as resources are concerned, we cover the whole spectrum as far as what we have at our fingertips. I mean,
100%.
Yeah, it just we are primed to do better.
Yeah, and look, let's be honest. Once D.C. decides they want to start liking, American energy again, once D.C. decides they want to allow the economy to stay open consistently and stop putting mandates that the Supreme Court has to throw out, and literally people start traveling again and using American energy again, shoot, man, we actually have an opportunity to grow quickly. So there is good news on the horizon, but I think at the same time we have to do a reality check and see where we are right now. And where we are right now is we're not getting some of the gains that our southern brethren in other states are getting.
Yeah, the tourism aspect of this is intriguing to me because I think that's going to be. I don't know that we will see in the near future a complete return to where we were before COVID, because a big chunk of that business is convention business, and a big chunk of businesses have decided our bottom line is taking a hit. We can't fly everybody all around the country for a meeting.
Yeah, and look, reputations are built one step at a time, and so we're about to have a big Mardi Gras coming up. If we show the rest of the country and the world, hey, we can have a fun event, we can do it safely. You'll come and have a good experience. That we can get back to that market share quickly if we start showing examples of this can work. One thing I did hear, talking to the other state chamber CEOs last weekend, is I told them, I said, look, we're doing big events. We're going back into our rhythm. Many of them had not made that decision yet, but they were also beginning to. So, they, like me, were hearing from their companies and their members, there is a hunger and a thirst to get back out there and get around people again. People have been tired of being, kept it, away from each other for a while. So I do think you're going to see a resurgence this year of people looking to find ways to network, to get together, to enjoy each other's company.
On a personal level, I completely agree with you. It's just getting it past the CFO to get it cleared. It's
correct.
That's the last hurdle right there.
All those corporate travel budgets have been pretty tight the last couple of years, and these companies said, "Wait a minute, maybe this works. Maybe we can sell by Zoom and all." But I think what you're starting to hear is, while that may have been a good bridge during a tricky time, the truth is these companies, if you've got established contacts and established relationships, it's okay to Zoom it.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to build your business or build your network or expand your market share or find new customers, man, it's hard to beat a handshake, and I think that's what companies are coming to the realization of.
Not just beat a handshake, but retain attention. It'll have to play itself out. I find that when the P&L reports have to be cleared, then it takes a little bit longer. Hey, I want to make sure we cover what y'all have going on at LABI because you've got a busy calendar coming up.
Man, it is getting busy pretty quickly. Let me just go with a couple things. First of all, this week, I was privileged to be invited by the Business Report to be one of their 3 speakers at their Power Breakfast this week. So Wednesday at the Crown Plaza, I'll be speaking there along with Kim Mulkey and John Davies. So, I feel like by far the weakest leg of that 3-legged stool. But look, I'm excited to do that, and I think that's a kickoff for what this year should be about. But right after that, we go to D.C. Mardi Gras, where we're hosting a lot of economic development meetings and opportunities up there. Come back in, and literally the next day, on February 1st, the redistricting session starts here in Louisiana. And then a week and a half after that, on February 10th, is our big annual meeting at the Crown Plaza. And we're going to have some redistricting folks coming in talking about the update, what those maps are looking like.
Okay.
We've got a great annual meeting speaker in Sarah Thomas, the first female to referee the Super Bowl. It's already on the verge of being a sold-out event. We expect 1,000 people in that Crown Plaza, but it'll be absolutely the who's who of the statewide business community that'll be there. And then a few weeks after that, we get into the regular session. So, look, I just tell you that in Louisiana, the next 2 months, there's going to be a lot of events. There's going to be a lot of political chess playing going on. And before long, we'll be in a regular session in early March trying to tackle some of these workforce issues and education reform that we heard about from our other state chamber CEOs. So we are off and running in a busy 2022 so far.
Absolutely. And, yeah, once Washington Mardi Gras hits, it's going to be just you're not going to get lower than third gear until the regular session is over with. In the meanwhile, we always appreciate the time. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking more about redistricting because it still seems very quiet right now. But I'm sure that'll heat up in the very near future. Stephen Wagaspak, president of LABI, we appreciate the time every single week, sir.
All right, big guy. Enjoy that retreat, Buzz, and keep it going as much as you can.
Absolutely. Will do. I appreciate you hopping on board. 7:50 at Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. Time for us to get your money now. Oh. I like being able to tell somebody I went on a marriage retreat and they're like, oh my God, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's fantastic. Speaking of which, good morning to my beautiful wife, Christy, who should be watching on YouTube because she doesn't have to go to work today. And she doesn't have to take the kids to school today. And she doesn't have to have the entire morning circus that she's going to have tomorrow. You didn't see Mathern's in the log? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't know why I thought that was BRPT. Okay. I'm supposed to. I'll put it this way. They're paying me for it. Yeah. Yeah, I'll cover it. All right. I'm gonna do Mathern's right here. Oh, snap. It depends on which ones. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't even looked at it yet. I'm not there yet. $7:55, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Thanks again to Stephen Wagasback from LABI for hopping on board. At some point, we need to have that workforce conversation specifically about hospitality, tourism, and the like. Because one of the things that's not being talked about right now, while we're talking about how tourism is slow to recover, the workforce in that particular field is going to continue to get pounded just because of the way we treat each other. I can't, I would not fault somebody for not wanting to get back into anything involved. Like, coming out of the pandemic, I'm not going back to that. Where people just they brutalize each other. Our level of entitlement, our level of Karenism is at an all-time high. I want to walk down that path at some point. Hey, got the outside in coming your way in just a minute. Senator Bill Cassidy next hour, and William Klayber, host of the new podcast, the MLK Tapes, next hour as well. Right now, though, got to take 60 seconds to tell you about the folks over at Mathern's Market. What are you doing for lunch today? Look, I know I tell you every day about Mathern's and the fantastic lunch counter they've got, and they're a full-service grocery store as well. But let me take one moment today to just request, beg if I have to, that you swing by Mathern's at LSU. Nicholson and Skip Burtman Drive today from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. They've got a blood drive going on today. They've teamed up with the folks from Vitalant, and I'm sure you've heard, throughout multiple news outlets, the blood supply right now is at a dangerous, dangerous low. Between the pandemic, coming off the holidays, where we're at right now is dangerously low, now more than ever. Your blood's needed, and every donation of blood can save up to 3 lives, and the folks over at Mathern's are hosting a blood drive, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Vitalant's Blood Mobile will be out there. Get more on Mathern's Facebook page, Mathern's Market Facebook page. You can learn where to call to set up an appointment, or if you're swinging on by, I'm sure they can help you out as well. By the way, recent vaccination for COVID-19 does not affect your ability to donate blood. Don't let this pandemic stand in the way of saving a few lives today. 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., Vitalant will be out at Mathern's Market. And then go inside and grab yourself a king cake afterwards. It's time for the Outside In. Let's roll. It's going to be an abbreviated Outside In today. I ran long talking about the blood drive. We start off in Iberville Parish. A sheriff's deputy and a wrecker driver were hurt Sunday morning when a truck blew through cones and ran into a previous crash scene. The Iberville Parish Sheriff's Department said a deputy, a wrecker driver, and state police troopers were responding to an accident on I-10 near the Whiskey Bay exit. Deputy said a car ran into a guardrail on the interstate. According to the sheriff's office, a FedEx truck ran through the cones that were set up to block off the accident, hit the deputy's car, which hit the wrecker's vehicle. The driver of the wrecker was airlifted from the interstate and suffered serious injuries. The sheriff's deputy was taken to the hospital but was released Sunday. John Garan, the driver of the FedEx truck, was booked on charges of negligent injuring, careless operation, and failure to obey signs. No bond has been set just yet. Down in Jefferson Parish, the Parkways Department busted up a homeless encampment underneath the West Bank Expressway in Marrero on Friday, left 2 people injured. The Parkways Department was responding to a complaint about the encampment, was using a bobcat to knock it down. A 25-year-old woman who was staying in the encampment had her face lacerated, required extensive surgery. This whole incident is now under investigation, and that is the Outside In presented by Baton Rouge Physical Therapy. Here comes CBS News.
WBRB, Baker, Baton Rouge, 98.1 HD3, Talk 107.3 FM.
How do I post a picture on the YouTube chat?
I don't know if you can do that, but you can
I want to.
You could post a link.
Yeah. Copy photo. Nope, it still won't let me do it. All right, let's do the link. There we go. The link gets it. All right, then. You got Senator Cassidy ready to go? Okay. How long is the William Klayber interview?
13 minutes.
Ew. All right, well, that's going to have to come right back in from the break then, because that's going to run us all the way up to 50 for sure. I asked your boy if he's a conspiracy theorist. He got pissed. Meanwhile, I'm grinning from ear to ear because I was expecting him to get pissed by that. You want to trigger a conspiracy theorist? Call him a conspiracy theorist. Oh, it's fun for me. Baiting and triggering conspiracy theorists is just, that's my idea of a good time. So I'll tell you, they're putting chemicals in the water that make the freaking frogs gay! Oh yeah, this day in history. I might want to start looking up some shit that happened. That's what we're going to call this segment. It's no longer this day in history. From now on, it's known as shit that happened.
Done.
I don't think we can say that on air.
We can't say shit on air?
No.
Okay.
No, in spite of the fact that it's been said 3 or 4 times on this show at some point. I had my own cousin said shit on the show.
On.
I know.
You should know better.
It was the beginning of the pandemic. He owns a CrossFit gym down in New Orleans. We were talking about staying fit, like when everything shut down. So he was doing this great program with a lot of at-home workouts, YouTube workouts you could follow along and whatnot.
Yeah.
And he just so innocently, but nonetheless. Hey, is Trevor Bauer on your list of birthdays today?
No.
Really?
I don't know who that is, truthfully.
It's because you don't know sports.
Ouch.
He's a Major League Baseball pitcher.
Well, I wouldn't know baseball.
It is America's pastime.
That's okay. America is a melting pot.
Yes, I know. Noted by all the international players that play baseball. .806 Talk 107.3 FM WBRP Mornings with Brian Haldane rolling right along. Hour 3 coming your way right now, and it will be a busy hour. We got Senator Bill Cassidy. We've got podcaster William Klayber. I was hesitant to do this, but afterwards, I'm glad I did. Bill Klayber hosts a podcast called the MLK Tapes. Today, of course, is Martin Luther King Day. The MLK Tapes dives into whether or not there was more to the assassination of Martin Luther King than meets the eye. Did James Earl Ray act alone, or were there other actors involved? It's going to get, and I can tell you it's going to because it's already done. I recorded the interview late last week. It's going to get a little bit conspiracy-ish. A little bit of lone gunman's theory sort of thing. But Klayber, who hosts the MLK Tapes, has also hosted the RFK Tapes, which is about Sirhan Sirhan and the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. Robert Kennedy. Anyway, there's a lot of similarities between John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King when it comes to how their assassinations went down. We will dive into all of that later on in the hour. Right now, it's the part of the show where Jake takes us back in time for a little segment we like to call This Day in History. You thought I was going to do it, didn't you?
I had thoughts. I had my thoughts.
Yeah. Hang on.
You really gonna do me like that?
Yeah, I am.
Come on, man. It's my segment.
No, I gotta retract a previous announcement.
All right, come on.
Well, because of Martin Luther King Day, they're rescheduling that blood drive over at Mathern's.
Noted.
So yeah,
That is good to know.
It actually makes sense because you have fewer people on LSU's campus, which would have fewer people turning out. So stand by for details. As soon as we have more for you, we will have more for you. But in the meanwhile, everything I just said about the blood drive remains true. We are at a critical need stage right now, but you can't help out at Mathern's today. If you wanted to, you could swing over by Vitalent. I believe they're open today off of 1 Calais.
Help the people out.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, this day in histoire.
Well, that's going to happen on a different day, but we're here to talk about this day in history. First things first, in 1773, Captain James Cook becomes the first to cross the Antarctic Circle.
Really?
All the way back in 1773. 1775,
You think his second in command, like every time they'd like make some significant progress, he'd go, "Now you're cooking," and the captain's just like, "It wasn't funny the first time."
Oh, did they have puns back in the day? That far?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would love to hear what they had to say. Well, 2 years later, in 1775, 9 old women were burnt as witches for causing bad harvests in Poland.
I mean, they shouldn't have done it.
I mean, they just got their priorities straight, honestly.
I'm glad to hear witch trials somewhere other than America, though.
Yeah. 1779, a lot happened in the 1770s. Captain James Cook's last notation in Discovery's ship log.
Okay.
A lot of James Cook stuff today. 1871.
What was the notation?
I don't know. I could check that for another segment if you want. But
Something up ahead looks like ice. We'll report later.
1871, first cable car patented by Andrew Smith Haldane
Okay.
in the U.S. It begins service 2 years later in 1873. Going on to 1920, the first day of prohibition of alcohol comes into effect in the U.S. as a result of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution. How'd that go?
Not well.
Not in the slightest. Chaos, people. 1929, Popeye makes his first appearance in a comic strip, Thimble Theater.
I used to be able to do a Popeye impression. If you don't use it, you lose it, though. I haven't done that in
Really?
years. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, they do.
Can't do it anymore.
Some little tricks go away over time, but I didn't think an impression could. But
Yep.
Be
If
like
you
that.
don't use it, you lose it.
1966. Obviously, it's his day, but Martin Luther King Jr. opens campaign in Chicago.
There you go.
1995, the LA Rams announced that they are moving to St. Louis.
Saw that one.
1997, NBA suspends Dennis Rodman indefinitely for kicking a cameraman.
Right in the business, too. Kick the dude right in his junk.
Come on. From like one man to another, that's just not cool.
Yeah.
That's all the events. Let's get to the birthdays. There are a ton.
Oh, whoa. 1990, Desert Storm began today.
Ah.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
That is kind of a big deal. Sorry, I just want to get right to the birthdays because there are so many to talk about
Yeah,
that
there
are Let's say A list. Let's just go with that. First things first, we got to talk about Betty White. She recently passed. She was born on this day in 1922. Happy birthday to her.
You heard what people were doing over the weekend? Donating to local animal shelters in her name. I mean, $5 and $10 at a time.
That's
but
how you know she had a great impact on the world.
Yeah, Betty White just made like 1,000 donations. Oh, cool.
Good for her. Yeah. Michelle Obama turns 58.
Okay.
Jim Carrey is 60 years old today.
Jim Carrey is 60. That's just weird to say out loud.
What a legend. Muhammad Ali was born on this day in 1942. Steve Harvey turned 65.
Wait. How did my list not have Muhammad Ali?
You tell me, man.
1942?
Mm-hmm.
Bro. That's a fail on this list's part. It's all sports people. You would think.
Greatest fighter of all time, Jake Paul, turns 25. That's a joke, obviously.
Well, because you just said Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, obviously, natural segment there. Or segue. Dwayne Wade turns 39.
Yeah.
DJ Calvin Harris turns 37. Benjamin Franklin was born on this day in 1706. What?
I'm sorry. Oh, Calvin Harris.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. I see the way you said DJ Calvin. I was like, who is DJ Calvin Harris?
There's not a DJ
Disc
before
jockey.
his name. Yeah.
When
He
I
is a
met you
DJ.
in a summer. Yeah, all right.
Ray J turns 40. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Zoe
That's what he
Deschanel.
said.
Zoe Deschanel is 41. James Earl Jones is 90.
Wow.
Yeah. And finally, Kid Rock is 50.
Okay.
A lot of celebrities to talk about for their birthdays. Happy birthday to all those mentioned. Deaths.
Wait. You left off a couple, though.
Well, I can imagine there are. A few.
Brady James.
I'm shrugging my shoulders.
Former Cowboys linebacker. Former LSU Tiger.
The Cowboys
Brady James.
lost.
Well, he wasn't out there.
Yeah, but they lost.
Former Cowboys linebacker.
They probably lost then, too.
Also, colossal D-bag Trevor Bauer.
Mm.
He pitches for the Dodgers.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
Suing a friend of mine. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the birthdays. Let's get to the deaths. Rutherford B. Hayes. That's the only one I had.
Rutherford B. Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And finally, the last segment we have is holidays. Obviously, it's MLK Day.
We can call off all the others.
Right then and there, we're good.
Yeah.
But that is this day in history.
All right, 8:13, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. Friday morning, I got the chance to catch up with Senator Bill Cassidy. It was after the show, so we will air that interview next, right here on Talk 107.3. It's weird to say out loud that a major league pitcher is suing a friend of mine. That's just weird to say.
Do you want me to bump in these interviews or no?
Yeah. Cassidy's how long?
14 and a half.
Okay. Please be new. They win. Spoiler alert. Tell you what, I'll go a step further. They're going to play Vanderbilt on Sunday and win that one too. We got to find a better way to do this because, like, with football, you can have a full week, right? And, like, but Blair's got to travel. Blair's got to, like, he can't be tied down to that. It's not fair to him. All right, Dan. Share to Twitter. Oh, I'm about to go away so y'all can hear Bill Cassidy. So, later. Time to welcome back to the show, as we do so often and love to do so often, Senator Bill Cassidy. Senator, good morning. How are you, sir?
Brian, fantastic. Good morning to you. Stay warm, brother. Stay warm.
You know, yeah, absolutely. It's it keeps fluctuating as it does in Louisiana. How bad is it up in D.C. right now?
It's not bad, but it fluctuates here too. And by the way, I hope you get back to Louisiana ASAP. A bad day in Louisiana is better than a good day in Washington, D.C.
Especially during carnival time, to say the least. I mean, you know, the parades, they are coming. We got a lot of business to tend to before we can get down to carnival time, and I've got to start with inflation. This was a growing topic last week, and pardon the pun, and I have a feeling it's going to continue to be on the rise this week. From your perspective, from your chair in the Senate, what can be done right now, short-term versus long-term, to help fight off inflation?
Yeah, short term, the administration should pull back on some of the spending they're proposing. It is no accident that they put that $1.9 trillion COVID relief package in March, passed on a party line vote, and they flooded the economy with lots of free money. And believe it or not, more money chasing fewer goods ends up with inflation. Secondly, it is also we have poor workforce participation. Unemployment is low. There's a lot of folks just sitting home. And so one of the things that is apparently putting a constraint on the economy, on goods being provided, is that folks are staying at home and not working. So there's not somebody to move goods around. And lastly, short term, they need to do a better job with the pandemic. If somebody is in quarantine and can't go to work, then it helps if they can go to work. And they've done a miserable job with the pandemic. Long term, the bipartisan infrastructure bill is going to address infrastructure needs in Louisiana. That's ports, it's highways, it's rail. That's going to help long term, but we need something short term too.
Talk about the unemployed for just a second. Not unemployment, but the unemployed. The supplemental benefits ran out a while ago. Are people just still riding out cash on hand, or we haven't seen the full on? We're seeing demand continue to trickle back in, but when are we going to see everybody finally just get up off the sofa and get back to work?
There's statistics out there that folks got bank accounts that are fatter than they've ever been before, and because of that, they just feel like they can stay home a little bit longer, and that's just resulting as it has resulted. People staying home a little bit longer. Now, by the way, sure, it's great to have a vacation. On the other hand, we know that if somebody lets their work skills rust, not only do they lose seniority, but they also lose kind of the fighting trim that makes you a better worker, therefore less likely to be promoted, therefore less likely to make more money in the future. So, yeah, it's great people having a vacation, I suppose, except that for their own self-interest, statistics show that folks end up worse off the longer they are unemployed.
I don't know how I missed out on this gravy train. Like, I've been working the whole time, and my bank account's not fatter than it's ever been. I feel like I'm left in the lurch here, Senator. I don't know what to do.
Well, that may be the bunch of kids you have, man. You know what I'm saying?
You know what?
Thought
That's
about
true.
that 12 years ago.
That is true. That is true. Hey, I had a conversation last week with Congressman Troy Carter about voting rights, and he and I are completely on different sides of the fence on this one. The voting rights bill that's been filibustered and whatnot, where are you at on not just the filibuster, but the bill itself?
Well, first, I oppose this voting rights bill, which is more about Democrats taking over, federalizing, if you will, how state and local government runs their elections, which gives Washington D.C. more say so in a municipal election in Livingston Parish than the local officials in Livingston Parish. I oppose that. And I will also say I strongly favor the filibuster. We just saw the height of hypocrisy. Democrats are saying the filibuster undermines democracy in the U.S., and yet they just filibustered a Ted Cruz bill that would put sanctions on Nord Stream 2, a pipeline that Russia uses to bring natural gas to Europe. Russia wants to build this pipeline to undermine democracy in Ukraine. So they use the filibuster to support Russia, but they want to get rid of the filibuster here in the United States. There's a lot of hypocrisy in Washington. This is like a lot of hypocrisy in Washington.
Well, and this is one where everyone's on the record at some point, right? I believe I was looking it up last week. Over 300 filibusters of Trump nominees from 2016 to 2020. You can't filibuster, and then when it doesn't please you, you just flip sides of the argument.
By the way, Mitch McConnell points out that Republicans have always supported the filibuster, even when we had control of everything. And his point is, and it's a valid point, what goes around comes around. If we had gotten rid of the filibuster and we had everything, then they get everything, and guess what happens? Our country whipsaws back and forth. And so it's kind of hard, Biden's finding out, to get people who are conservative to agree to your agenda. But it can happen. We did the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which has lots of things conservatives like. And so it can happen. They just don't want to go through the effort.
Speaking of the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the difference between that one and the Build Back Better Act, which is seemingly dead in the water, which are we going to see more spending in that regard? Is there going to be more attempted, or has the other side just decided, okay, we're starting to lose these battles, we need to take our foot off the gas?
Well, I don't know what they're going to do with Build Back Better, but it does seem as if it's dead. Now, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there's a lot coming down for that that's going to benefit our state, our nation. In a sense, we're going to be employing people instead of giving them money to stay unemployed. And that's going to be something that's really good. But as regards the BBB, and by the way, this is not accidental. You may recall, Brian, way back when we had a conversation, I pointed out that when you pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill, it takes away all the good things that could encourage someone to vote for the BBB. You take out the good stuff, as one of my Democratic colleagues said, if I get my dessert first, why do I eat my spinach?
Yes.
The infrastructure was the dessert. The BBB was the spinach. He wasn't going to vote for the spinach. So that said, the strategy worked. We're getting roads and bridges, but we're not getting BBB.
Senator Bill Cassidy is our guest. Got a couple more minutes with the senator. I got to go back to something you mentioned a little while ago, but I want a deeper dive from you on it. That is a press release your office put out last week. Cassidy votes to support sanctions on Russian Nord Stream 2 pipeline. What was your reasoning behind this, and what are the effects, not just on the U.S., but on Louisiana specifically?
Yeah, so Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Russians are building it to Germany. They would like to provide all the natural gas for Europe, but when they do so, of course, it puts Europe at the mercy of Russia. And when Russia produces their natural gas, by the way, they have all kinds of emissions. So it's environmentally like the worst way to produce natural gas. Now, what I prefer, for geopolitical reasons, let's cripple the Russian economy by not letting them export that natural gas. By the way, we can provide that natural gas. All we have to do is continue to produce America's resources in the Outer Continental Shelf, in the Haynesville Shale, etc. We can send our natural gas over there, creating American jobs, using American environmental standards, lowering greenhouse gas emissions instead of raising them. And did I say it helps decrease Russia's ability to cause problems around the world? So there's a lot of good things about it. As I also mentioned earlier, in the hypocrisy of hypocrisy, Democrats used the filibuster to kill a bill that would have put sanctions on the Nord Stream 2.
I don't understand being in favor of a Russian pipeline and against American pipelines. That doesn't sound like it's anti-oil. I can understand an anti-oil stance, right? I would understand wanting to get rid of oil as an energy source altogether more than I would understand saying, I don't want oversight, I don't want American jobs, I want to leave this up to somebody else to benefit off of, profit off of, and not allow me to check and make sure they're doing it right. That to me is the part that doesn't make sense.
Well, so you can also look at it differently. There is an incoherence in the Biden administration's energy policy. On the one hand, they do everything they can to limit production of United States energy resources. They don't allow Canada's the pipeline to Canada to come down to the Louisiana refineries.
Right.
But when gas prices go up, they beg OPEC to put more oil out there in the international market. So they don't seem to understand if you decrease supply, you're going to increase price. And if you want to keep ourselves from having to beg OPEC, then you produce America's resources. There's a lack of coherence in what they are doing.
And this ties back into our foreign oil dependence to begin with.
Absolutely. By the way, we can have energy security in all of North America, between Canada and the United States. We can produce enough oil and gas for our two economies and export around the world.
Yes.
Now, we still may bring in some, but that's purely a swap of our sweet crude out of Louisiana going to an unsophisticated refinery in the Caribbean, but we taking heavy crude because our refineries and our workers are so good. So, but there may be a swap, but if we had to, we could be totally self-sufficient. And the Biden administration is sacrificing that.
Senator Bill Cassidy, our guest, for just a couple more minutes. Before I get you out of here, Senator, I got to ask you about, I came across this, and I'm not sure if it's true or not. There was a report, I don't remember where I saw it. The Boston bomber got a stimulus check?
The Boston bomber got a stimulus check.
What?
So the first time there was a stimulus package, somebody told me, criminals got that. And I thought, no, that can't be right. I investigated. Sure enough, they did. I asked about it. And they said, well, that was a mistake, oversight. We tried to get this money out fast. So I put up an amendment that would say that if you are convicted, you can't get a stimulus check. And Democrats were the ones that defeated it, using the filibuster, by the way. They defeated it using the filibuster, and they would not allow it on there. So now the Boston bomber got a stimulus check, as well as your rapist, your murderer, etc. The victims' tax dollars, in a sense, went to give stimulus checks to the people that victimized them.
I don't understand it, and it's another example of money just being flung around from a ready, fire, aim perspective that brings us right back to the top of the conversation, which has led us to the push demand inflation that we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. There's so much free money out there, including for inmates. You have limited goods. With more money, you're going to have inflation. The Biden administration does their best to deny that, because really we were doing pretty well with all the money we put out there until we got to their American Relief Plan in March or so. And that's when that just final extra dose, boom, things took off.
Can I put my senator on hold and talk to Dr. Cassidy for just a second? I've got a COVID question for you.
I'm a gastroenterologist, brother, so bend over.
That's the wrong kind of plume, sir. Whoa. So with Omicron variant, this has been touted as, I shouldn't say touted as, but hoped for a flash fire more than a sustained burn. Is it looking like that's still trending that way, or you're worried a little bit in the back of your mind that this might have a little more staying power?
Omicron will flare out. There will be another variant. This virus is not through with us yet. And so it's not like you're in a fight and you get somebody down, but they're really bad. Mm-hmm. You don't give up the fight because you have them under control. You keep after them. And this Omicron variant, it's going to peak. It's going to begin to recede, and something else is going to come along. So we just have to never let down our guard. We need to do everything possible to control this virus. Get vaccinated, get your therapeutics out, do whatever you can to prevent it, because people who've already been vaccinated are getting infected with Omicron. Now they have
Senator Bill Cassidy is our guest. We are just straight up out of time. We've got CBS News coming your way right now. After CBS News, kill it off. After CBS News, we're right back at it. I was still hearing it. It was still playing. No, it was kill it. We'll just get rid of it. All right, I'm going to do like a 20-second weather and then bump into the next one, okay? All right, what's up, YouTube? I hated to fade out on that last answer, but we were just out of time. All right. Hey, like that, huh? We had Dr. Midway on last week. Talk about shark attacks. When the full moon is here. The sharks come out at night. The sharks come out at night. Bong, 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 bong. Whew. Nap. Hey, yo.
At Our Lady of the Lake, our love of this community and our legacy cancer services have guided us for decades. We're proud to announce the newest investment into our expansion of comprehensive cancer care with the Our Lady of the Lake Cancer Institute. This institute will be home to leading cancer research, advanced specialists, and our trusted physicians and staff. Because cancer takes everything, we'll stop at nothing. Learn more at OLOLRMC.
What was I looking up? Oh, yeah. Weather. We'll go weather and then bumper and then into William Klayber. Oh, look, baby pigs! No, it's a podcast. We are looking at sunny skies today with a high of 59 degrees. Overnight low tonight gets down to 34. Tomorrow we'll top out at 68 with an overnight low of 54. Wednesday we get all the way back up to 75, and that's when you can repeat the cycle of rain coming through and it getting cold all over again. Your overnight low Wednesday night and the Thursday morning is going to be 44 degrees. This is after a 95% chance of rain on Wednesday. Overnight low 44. Thursday we only top out at 49. From the low to the high is only going to be a shift of 5 degrees. Then it gets all the way down to 30 Thursday night, and we'll stay with lows getting below freezing for the next 4 nights after that. Right now, we're at 43 degrees in downtown Baton Rouge. We all know the story. April 4th, 1968, a lone gunman assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. But is that the whole story? Well, we're joined right now by a guy who's tackling whether or not that's the whole story. His name's William Klayber. He's the host of the true crime podcast, the MLK Tapes, and he joins us now. William, welcome to Talk 107.3. How are you, sir?
Oh, great, Brian. Good today. Absolutely.
Want to start with the very basics. What got you on this path?
Well, that goes back 30 years ago, but I did but it's relevant, so I'm going to talk to you about it. But I was part of a group that went through the Robert Kennedy police files that have been held secret for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if Sirhan alone had murdered Robert Kennedy, there was no reason to keep the police files secret. And when we finally got in there, they were forced to open them. And we started going through the files and listening to their audio tapes. We understood why the files were secret, because it was complete record of their dishonest and corrupt investigation into the murder, where they coerced witnesses and destroyed evidence and fabricated evidence. It was astounding. And so I wrote an article. I went in and interviewed Sirhan in prison and wrote an article, and nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted this story. And I was very discouraged and went home to upstate New York. We're using a tiny public radio station up here, using razor blades and scotch tape, which is how it was done back then. Yeah. Produced a 1-hour radio documentary on the murder of Robert Kennedy titled The RFK Tapes, and where we played the tapes of the police threatening witnesses and other misconduct on their part. And the program was picked up by 160 public radio stations across the country. Time magazine ran a full-page review, and St. Martin's Press called me up and asked me to write a book. All that from a story that nobody wanted. And what's the difference? The difference is that in the podcast, it wasn't a podcast, in the documentary, you could hear the witnesses, the actual witnesses, saying what they saw, telling the stories of what happened to them. And there is a power in that that goes far beyond what any author can do just writing down the words. And that was a big lesson for me, is if you have the witnesses themselves, you've got something. So years later, when I bumped into William Pepper, who had worked for 40 years on the King assassination and understood all the audio tapes that he had collected over that time, it wasn't a big leap to think about doing a podcast. And in fact, I thought a podcast was the perfect way to tell this story. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, a podcast is kind of the modern radio documentary. It's a great phrasing of it, because so many podcasts, especially true crime podcasts, take on that persona. So how deep do we go here? And without spoiling, obviously, without spoiling the podcast, what have you uncovered?
A lot. And again, it's not me uncovering it. It's been a lot of other people doing the work. I'm just sort of putting the pieces together. But we've got an incredible list of witnesses who saw very important things, saw things that just totally destroy the whole basic narrative of this thing. And we have Art Haynes Jr., who was Ray's first attorney, and he had just come out of law school. He'd gone to Princeton. He's still practicing law in Alabama. And I had a great interview with him a few months back, and he just laid it out because he worked with Ray for 4 months when Ray came home. And Ray was kept in a cage where the light was on all night, and he wasn't allowed to see anybody. And they were keeping him out of sight. And Art Haynes was working with him, getting ready for the trial. And Haynes was convinced, I'm going to get this guy off because there's no evidence against him. And what there is, appears to have been planted. He's a really smart guy, and he loves the law, and he loves the truth, and he really lets it out. And that's the next episode coming up. But we've got just knockout people every episode. People that, Captain Jerry Williams, who would have formed the police security detail, the all-black police security detail for King when he came to visit Memphis, except for the last day when King came to visit Memphis. Excuse me, I got a phone. The detail was not told to form. So, he's and also the 2 black firemen in the firehouse across the street from Lorraine. The 2 black firemen were told to go home the day before the murder. They were told to go home and then report to a different fire station. You have this kind of stuff going on all around. I think one of the most compelling witnesses we have, we got a lot of them, but Lenny Curtis came forward 35 years after the crime. And he had been the janitor at the police rifle range, and what he saw and overheard at the rifle range made him absolutely positive that he was watching the assassination in progress. And he tried to warn King and wasn't able to. But his family was very afraid for him, and they begged him not to go forward. It's not your job. But finally, 35 years later, the kids were grown. He decided to come forward. And he told Bill Pepper, you can record me. I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to tell you what I saw. But I don't want this recording released to anybody until after I'm dead. That's not your everyday kind of deal. And the other part of the deal was he wanted Martin Luther King III, King's eldest son, to sit with him as he told this story. So they sat down, and he basically said to Martin III, this is what I know about how your father died. And he died. He died a few. He died about a half a dozen years ago. So we are now free to play that tape, and we do in episode 10 of the MLK tapes. We play that tape that Lenny Curtis made, but we've got a bunch of others of people that were near death who've come forward and said, "This is what I know," and in some cases, "This is what I did." We have 4 different people who played roles in the assassination who have given us statements about what they did as part of this assassination.
Was James Earl Ray, can he be exonerated, or was he part of something larger?
That's a great question. It appears that James Earl Ray only involvement was the fact that he was brought there to be the fall guy. And they got him to buy a rifle in Birmingham that would then have his fingerprints on it, and they threw that gun down on the street where supposedly Ray left it after he shot King. Art Haynes Jr. said they absolutely had a witness who saw that rifle and the package thrown down on the street 10 minutes before King was shot. Oh, wow. And there are a lot of other reasons to believe that rifle was not the rifle that killed King. It appears that Ray was to be the fall guy and that he didn't know King was going to be murdered. He thought he was participating in some kind of gun deal. In normal sense of the law, he would be innocent of the crime.
William Klayber's our guest. He's the host of the True Crime Podcast, the MLK Tapes. William, I got to ask, man, because I've read a couple articles about this and getting ready for this interview, and if you follow a lot of what happened here, or a lot of what's claimed to have happened here, it seems to follow a playbook that we saw play out a few times in the 60s, especially if, and I hesitate to throw out the term, but especially if you follow conspiracy theories, like this playbook, the way this thing is spelled out, it sounds like a story we've heard before.
I'm afraid it is a story you've heard before, and tell me this: why does Lee Oswald? I know we're going a little far afield, but why does Lee Oswald shoot John Kennedy? Does anybody know offhand?
Something about communism.
Yeah, people don't do things for no reason. Lee Oswald had no motive, and somebody says, "Well, he wanted to be in the history books. He wanted to be famous." Oh yeah. Then why he's walking down the hall, and the one time he gets to speak to reporters, he says, "I'm just a patsy." That doesn't sound like somebody who wants to be famous. Okay, but how can you have a murder like that and no real explanation as to why it happened? And of course, I don't think he shot anybody that day. Again, he was set up with the worst rifle in the history of rifles. Well, we have the same thing. Also in the Bobby Kennedy case. So that's probably none of the bullets from Sirhan's gun ever struck Robert Kennedy, and that's almost a certainty. So something else is going on in that pantry that we haven't been told. But we had that exact situation in Memphis with James Earl Ray. He was supposed to be captured. He was supposed to be the assassin. But we know who else was involved. We know the names of the people who were on that knoll with the rifle, the three guys up there with the rifle. We know who they were. We know who people they were working with. And we know some other stuff, big stuff, that we're going to reveal at the end, which we think is going to blow the lid off this case. So we're going all the way with it. We're not going to just sort of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and, maybe we'll never know. Mm-hmm. Well, there's some pieces of it we'll never know, but we're going to know most of it.
Two more before I get you out of here, and I greatly appreciate your time this morning. The first of which I kind of have to ask, because I fancy myself as a bit of a conspiracy theorist. Would you call yourself a conspiracy theorist?
Absolutely not, and I hate that term, and it's a derogatory term because it kind of makes it sound like people like myself who are really working on these cases are somehow sitting around up in our attics, sort of thinking of theories. I'm an evidence guy. Mm-hmm. I'm an evidence guy. I look at the evidence, and the evidence shows. If the evidence shows that Sirhan acting alone really murdered Robert Kennedy, then that's what it shows. And there have been a couple instances in the Robert Kennedy case where there was something, a story that went and looked like it was on our side, and after a lot of digging, I discovered that the person really was lying. And that was disappointing. But I don't keep on with that story if I know it's not true. So I'm an evidence guy. I'm not a conspiracy guy.
So I asked that question to ask this question. Have you seen any pushback or any fighting along the way as you've tried to build up this, build the evidence within this podcast?
Not yet.
Okay.
Who knows where it's going. I mean, today is MLK Day, and they have their usual flacks. Guys they trot out who are deeply invested in the official murder, official version of the murder. These guys will be trotted out and will have their say. But I don't really care what they say about me. I want people to listen to the MLK tapes and hear what these witnesses have to say, and they can decide for themselves. They don't have to listen to me.
He is William Klayber, host of the True Crime Podcast, the MLK Tapes. Where can folks find it?
Well, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, any place you get your podcasts, you can find the MLK Tapes.
William, I appreciate you hopping on board today with us.
Thank you.
Bye. 8:51 at Talk 107.3 FM WBRP. We're going to take a quick break right here. We'll come back. We'll check traffic one more time before we get you out of here. Coming back, we got to talk about Omicron parties. This is a thing? Yeah, apparently so. We're talking about it next on Talk 107.3. You still have cut two? Okay. Ooh, boy got hot and triggered. Conspiracy theorist is a derogatory term, huh? No, I asked it on purpose, too. Okay.
President of the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Agriculture is big business in our state. $11 billion a year for Louisiana's economy. When other businesses have shut their doors, our essential Louisiana farmers and ranchers continue to provide each of us with the food and fiber we need to survive. That's why I'm a proud member of the Louisiana Farm Bureau family. Visit LAFarmBureau.org. The Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of Louisiana agriculture.
Hey, it's Matt Moscona reminding you about our friends over at Wbrz. Two locations. Nicholson just out the campus. Bluebonnets right in front of the Mall of Louisiana with 24 flavors of award-winning jumbo chicken wings, ice cold draft beer, full service bar, and sports on TV. There's something going on at Pluckers every night of the week. Every Monday is all you can eat wings. Tuesday, kids eat free. Wednesday, trivia. Thursday, all you can eat boneless wings. It's always a great night to get by Pluckers. Nicholson or Bluebonnet, remember, at Pluckers, if you don't like our wings, we'll give you the bird.
Since the early 1800s, the Selassie family has played a significant role in the retail industry in Louisiana. Stuart Selassie has achieved the Certified Diamond Graduate designation from the prestigious Gemological Institute of America. What that means to you, whether it's appraisals, design, build, repair, or diamond sales, you have an expert you can count on. At Selassie's, you make all the right choices. Selassie Jewelry and Fine Gifts in the heart of the Ditto Springs Antique District. Find them on Facebook.
Now, your WBRZ traffic update from Ashley Fouché.
So far, so good.
Wow. It's super hot with the space heater on, but the second I turn it off, like I could feel the temperature dropping quickly.
This report is brought to you by Wbrz, where you can get up to $100 instant savings with the purchase of 4 eligible Bridgestone or Firestone tires. Visit ShawBillsTire.com to learn more.
8:55, Talk 107.3 FM, WBRP. One more segment to go here on Mornings with Brian Haldane. What do you think? What do you think? Something to it? William Klayber, host of the MLK tapes. I don't know. Aside from the fact that he was like having other phone calls and leaving a phone off the hook. That was a little bit humorous. Was it enough to get you to listen to it? I don't know. I'm kind of on board. I want to check it out. Your boy got triggered by the term conspiracy theorist, though, didn't he? Woo! He got hot fast. Anyway, it's available on demand at talk1073.com. If you missed it, wanted to check it out, re-listen to any of it. And of course, if you want to check out the MLK tapes, they're out as well wherever you get your podcasts. So it's looking like folks are starting to throw parties. I shouldn't say starting to. Have been throwing parties to intentionally get COVID. We'll talk about that in just a second. First, though, I want to remind you about the folks over at Baton Rouge Physical Therapy. They've got 6 locations throughout the greater Baton Rouge area. Look, if you've got those nagging injuries that just don't seem to go away, nothing major, just something that's keeping you from being your best you physically, you might want to check out brptlake.com, brptlake.com. Find out which of their 6 locations is nearest to you, and then give them a call at 917-9185 to set up your complimentary screening, 917-9185. Baton Rouge Physical Therapy has been around for more than 60 years, helping you get back to being your best you physically. They know how to walk you through the process of just engaging your comfort level when it comes to physical therapy, getting to the root of your physical limitations, and getting you on the path to recovery. 917-9185, brptlake.com. All right, Governor John Bell Edwards in his press conference last week talking about COVID was mentioning that a number of people are trying to get it on purpose. I did not think this was a thing, but lo and behold, it sure is. In fact, here was the governor commenting on the, what a bad game plan that is.
You remember we used to talk in terms of flattening the curve, and that's so that too many people don't end up with the disease all at once, because that's what presents so much pressure on the healthcare delivery system that it just can't manage. And so you have to extend the time horizon over which people will be positive for the disease, but also you want that number to be as low as possible, because that's how you protect the capacity in your hospital system. And so it's very irresponsible and dangerous for an individual, based on what might happen to that individual should they contract COVID, but collectively speaking, it's a very dangerous situation for the state too if that happens. And we know that Omicron is much more transmissible, so we are seeing record numbers of cases anyway.
That was in response to the idea that it's just a bad idea to have a COVID party. I wanted to dive into this a little more, so I started doing some Googling over the weekend, come up with a story out of San Francisco, ABC San Francisco, talking about, they're quoting University of California, San Francisco infectious disease specialist Dr. Peder Hong saying, I think there's a sense of fatalism in people, like I'm going to get it anyways, so why not just get it and get it over with? Also coming across stories out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. In Italy, anti-vaxxers are paying $160 for dinner with wine and COVID-positive people so they can catch coronavirus and avoid getting the shot. And then you got another story from the World Health Organization, all converging on the same thing. COVID parties. Intentionally getting COVID. How does that work? I mean, how do you guarantee that you're getting it? I don't know. We might have to pick up on it at a later time. Right now, we got to get out of here for Fox News. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, YouTubes, I got to skedaddle. Have a great Martin Luther King Day. If you have the day off, enjoy the day off, but don't forget why you have the day off. And otherwise, we'll be back at it tomorrow. I got a couple things in the works for tomorrow. I believe Jeff Landry is with us at 8:15, and Congressman Troy Carter, 8:35. So we'll see you then.